All right, welcome back to Toy Informer and a new episode of Gaming Gold. This is the video series where I talk about those hidden treasure video games, those cartridges and discs you might not be aware are worth as much as they actually are. I've been doing these more platform specific lately, so today we are specifically going to focus in on Super Nintendo games. Yes, SNES was one of my favorite consoles growing up. It was just at the time, it was such a leap forward as far as graphics went from the original Nintendo to what we got with the Super Nintendo. And it was just exciting. And I remember a lot of my favorite games come from this platform in particular. But plenty of games to cover, plenty to talk about. Hopefully, you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing this tiny little channel. And if you want to see what Super Nintendo games I want to talk about today, just hang up for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, let's get into those hidden gem video games, those secret little treasures that you should be keeping an eye out for. Whether you go looking for games at your, flea markets, used bookstores, Goodwills, wherever you're finding cheap old games, these are some cartridges you might, want to keep an eye out for because they're worth a few bucks more than you might actually expect. Starting off with a classic. I know you all know this series. Super Nintendo's Final Fantasy III from Squaresoft. This was a Japanese RPG. This is actually Final Fantasy VI over in Japan, but here in the US they renamed it Final Fantasy III. This came out in 1994, and if you find just the cartridge, just the Super Nintendo cartridge alone, you're looking at probably about 72 bucks. Well, ain't too bad. I mean, $72 for something maybe you find in a stack in a pile that's like 10 bucks for the whole lot. And who knows what you come across when you're at a flea market, a yard sale, or wherever you're doing it. Like I said, you're hunting for old video games. Just something to keep an eye on while you're flipping through stuff. While you might be a traditional comic collector or toy collector, sometimes these things cross pollinate and you find other, interesting little trinkets on tables and you go, well, what is this? Do I know much about this? This is just some helpful info, hopefully, when you're out there hunting that maybe you remember some of this stuff and you find some of these little treasures because if you were to get lucky enough to find one still complete with the box instructions, all that fun stuff, now you're looking at 325. 325 is pretty good. And if you still find one somehow sealed, and this is probably thanks to those grading video game collectors because they will really pay a lot for some sealed games. But a sealed one of these, $1,225. Yeah, you don't believe me? Well, it wasn't that long ago, just back in December, 1225 on 41 bids on eBay. So there it is. I mean, these things can go for a lot more than you might expect. And just to give you a sense of the game, just to kind of throw it back, it was an RPG. It was a classic RPG. I mean, Final Fantasy was one of the great series. They're still going. I mean, granted, they're in the teens now, but going back in the day, I know everybody probably thinks of Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation, but here is where it started with Nintendo first, and Super Nintendo really helped it along. So check out, see if you remember this stuff. This is bringing back old memories for you, like it does for me. Man, something about that turn-based RPG system that was so, I don't know, so calming. I mean, you would spend hours, whole night playing games like this. And man, getting back to it, there's our first game. Now we got another cartridge for you, and this one is a little bit different, a little bit of a different platform for you. This is an American Tail, Fievel Goes West. I don't know if you remember the sequel to American Tail. This was an animated feature, and they made a video game adaptation to go along with it from Hudson Soft. This was technically a platformer, also in 1994, which was a big year for Super Nintendo. And this one, if you could find just the cartridge, 85 bucks. 85 bucks is a good price for just a movie adaptation type game. And again, just to show you, this is what kind of sells. Could go for more. That's like an average price that I'm giving you. But December 28th, which was a little more than a week ago, 120 bucks was accepted for just the cartridge alone. So again, decent prices you can find on some of these things. Now, if you find one complete in the box, well, you're looking at a bit more. $314. Not quite as much as Final Fantasy 3, but still a decent return if you can find one. And if you find one still sealed, $482, which again is a good price. Not nearly the same as those boxed versions of Final Fantasy, but still impressive nonetheless. And again, silly little game adapted from the movie. You can see the cartoony nature of it all. I mean, it is what it is. It's Fievel Goes West. They took American Tail and then they made it a Western. Cool. I don't know. I remember this movie, but I didn't like it as much as the first. The first was a classic. Second one seems more just kind of amusing and it has more of a cult based following. But again, with that, you got the game and that cult will pay. So with that said, let's get on to our next cartridge. And our next one is another fun little game that is based off of a toy line. And this is the Pirates of Dark Water. Technically another platformer, but more of that beat 'em up style with like the sword and the fist. So not so much like a blaster or a gun-based game. So once again, 1994. This is a cartridge that can net you $110 if you can find one. And again, Pirates of Dark Water, I think they had a cartoon as well, short-lived. I remember the toys. Mostly I remember the toys because the weapons were really cool. And yeah, they're a little bit larger than your normal sized, like your Secret Wars or your Superpowers, or a little bit on the larger side, getting closer towards that, 6-inch figure scale. But fun. Sunsoft game too. Sunsoft made some classics back in the day, but $110 ain't too bad. And here's one that sold again, end of December, $112.49 for just the cartridge alone. You can see it still has the stickers on it. The stickers from, it looks like that's, I don't know if that's Hollywood Video or West Coast Video, but there are rental stickers still on that bad boy. So once again, who knows where you're going to find these games? There could be all kinds of weird closeouts and storage locker sales where they just find all this back stock and from closed video stores and rental stores of all kinds. It was a time long forgotten now, I guess. When we used to go to rent stuff, be it movies or video games, we actually had to leave the house. Yeah, memories, right? All good memories. But with that said, if you find one closed and with the manual in the box, you're looking at again over $300. And if it's still sealed, this one's almost $1,000. So that's kind of impressive too when you look at it. And again, this is more of that side scroller platformer beat 'em up kind of thing. So you get not quite Double Dragon. I mean, Double Dragon was old school, but in the kind of continuation of that. Uh, you know, it is. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is more of a side scroller beat 'em up. I don't think this was just a like a fighter. It wasn't like a one-on-one fighter. This was more of a side scroller, I believe. But you could do a two-player thing, so you're going to go along in the game together. But again, cool stuff, fun stuff. That's only 3 games. We still got a handful more, and our next one is coming up right here, and we're talking about Mr. Nuts. I just like the name of it. It's just kind of funny. It was kind of silly, made me laugh. Again, 1994. Once again, another platformer, Mr. Nuts by Ocean. This thing is, it's a game. It's a game. And with that said, it's $132. Just if you can find a cartridge alone, because people are fond of Mr. Nuts and this crazy little squirrel. You remember the time. There were so many animal, humanoid type characters that were taken off with their own games. Your Crash Bandicoots and your, all the different creatures that we've had, from Sonic to Sly Cooper and etc. Mr. Nuts is not forgotten. And Mr. Nuts right here, December 20th, 186.12. One sold for, again, just the cartridge alone. Just a cart. But if you did have the box and the manual, well, you're looking at almost $500. And if you had it sealed, well, now you're talking over $1,500 for Mr. Nuts. And again, I gotta say a lot of it just has to be due to the silly nature of the name, because it's just kind of fun to say. I keep saying it over and over again, and it makes me giggle and smile all to myself. But again, you can see the game is kind of in that a bit of a DuckTales kind of vibe, just knocking off another Mario, just that side-scrolling platformer. This was how games were back then. We didn't have open world first person shooters and all that stuff. This is the basis of 80% of the games that were out there. So with that said, still cool stuff. I don't remember ever playing Mr. Nuts, but a lot of people do, and enough people to want to pay these premium prices remember it. So keep an eye out for it. With that said, we're going to keep it going, and we're going to go on to our next game here, which is another cartridge in a similar vein in that kind of adult type of humor. You got Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy Buckaroos. So the next year, hey, finally moved on to 1995. We got another platformer, and this time it's Ren and Stimpy. You guys know Ren and Stimpy from the Nickelodeon classic stuff, but 176 bucks for this loose cartridge. That is an impressive price for, again, plenty of fans still out there for Ren and Stimpy. And if you find one still with the box and manual, well, you're also done well because that's over $600 on average. And if you find it somehow still sealed, well, count your blessings because it's almost 2 grand, almost 2K for a sealed Ren and Stimpy Buckaroos. Granted, this is not the only Ren and Stimpy Super Nintendo game. This is the one that came out in 1995. I think this is probably the second on the platform on Super Nintendo, but still impressive prices because I don't think they made a ton of these. I don't think they made a ton of these at this point. But here we go. Ren and Stimpy. It is what you would expect. It's a Ren and Stimpy game. Side-scrolling platformer, just as we played. Again, that was how games were. Now, with that said, we still got more impressive games for you and more things for you to keep an eye on. So with that, we're going to shift gears a little bit. And given the fact that Nosferatu hit theaters, granted, different movie, that A24, we do have a Nosferatu game from back in 1995. And it was a platformer on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Yes, this is almost 30 years ago. Again, no connection between the movie and this apart from the title. But, I mean, it's based off of Dracula or a vampire, whatever you want to say. But Nosferatu, and again, we might see some increased interest due to the fact that the movie is out there. It just reminds people of a game like this. Like, oh, I remember that game when I was younger. Maybe. But just a cartridge? 200 bucks. 200 bucks basically for one of these. Here's an example sale in case you don't believe me. December 29th, $207.87 with $20 shipping out of Canada for just the cartridge. And again, marked authentic, tested. You got to check for that because there are knockoff games, there are bootleg type games, there are recreations, refurbished ones, all different kind of stuff out there. It's kind of tough, it's just go with your gut. That's the best thing I can tell you when you're dealing with used games and old games is go with your gut. And if a price is too good to be true, it most likely is. So just be careful when you're out there shopping. But there's nothing beating that old classic cartridge feel. And if you were just again at a yard sale or something like that, you'll know the difference. You could see it, you could feel it. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's just you just know. If you played it originally, you just know. You younger folk out there who might be watching this, you won't know the feeling of taking a cartridge, blowing on the cartridge, putting it in the system, and how we used to play back in the day. But that's how it was. And going back to Nosferatu, if you find one in the box with the manual, well, you're looking at 440, 441. Again, not a bad price. If it's still sealed, you can double it basically, going over $800 for this bad boy. And just to give you a sense, it is not just Castlevania knocked off, but it might be kind of a little bit. But this guy is nowhere near as cool as Simon Belmont. This is just a guy in jeans. Looks like he's rocking double denim, actually. Just some high tops. And yeah, side-scrolling platformer. And you fight Dracula, basically. Or a Nosferatu. Is what it is. But again, if you find one, good money. Good money behind that game. With that, keeping it rolling, we've got another cartridge for you, and this time it's Wild Guns. This is a shooter from 1994, so we're going back to the classic year of 1994, over 30 years ago now. This Wild Guns game, man, if you find just the cartridge, you're looking at $250. $250 is a nice return if you can find one of these. Because hell, you can find an old cartridge and you're like, man, they want 20 bucks for this. They even want 50 bucks for this. Well, if it's the right game, 50 bucks is a bargain considering what you can get for this, on the aftermarket elsewhere. If you find the market of people who are willing to pay, you might make yourself quite a bit of money. So $250 for just the cart. If the box and manual are there, you're looking at almost $600. And if you find one still sealed, not quite as big a return as some of the other games, but still decent, $785. And again, just to give you a sense of how these things actually can still sell for this, and to show you, look it on eBay. Christmas Day, somebody bought one of these on Christmas for $1,000, and this was not sealed. This was complete in box with the box, the manual, everything. $1,000, which again is way above the averages that I've got here. But I mean that happens. That's why I try to find recent examples just to give you a real sense if I can. So, with that said, this was a shooter. Two players could hop in on this thing. It was kind of like it was side scrolling, but you were aiming down the barrel, kind of like at the screen. So it was almost not a Hogan's Hero type because that was you actually with a electric controller thing. But this was more of you just almost Sunset Riders ish. You going down the side, and again, there's two of you, so you can have a second player. Always fun when there's you can do a two-player game and something like this. So it's always fun to have a partner. Watching your back, keep you in there because sometimes somebody's got to draw fire. Somebody needs to get out of the way because they're near death or they got one life left, etc. You just got to keep the game going and get past that checkpoint or that next boss. So with that said, big money still behind this Wild Guns game. So we're still not at the top, and we're still not at the end of my list. We still have a few more that are even more impressive than that. Starting off here with Metal Warriors from Konami. Platformer, mech style game, as you might guess. Yeah, you'd be riding a huge mech. This came out in 1995, all of 30 years ago. You find this cartridge, just the cartridge alone, $363. $363 for just the cartridge. You don't believe me? Look, here's an example. December 20th, just the cartridge, $599. That's well above the average I'm giving you there. So these games are collectible. There is a market for these. You think it's crazy, but I'm telling you, people love collecting these. A lot of money and nostalgia these days because a lot of people who have that type of nostalgia now have good paying jobs and have that extra income that they can go throw at old nostalgic memories to recapture their youth. I'm guilty of it. I buy plenty of comics, toys, and all that stuff. I haven't really delved into the classic video game collecting like this because, one, I don't have time to play the games that I already have, let alone go back and play the classics. But there are a lot of different ways you can go back. If you just wanted to play the classics, there's a lot of emulators out there. There's a lot of those plug and play systems you can plug in any TV, and they have the controllers attached, and they have like 1,000 games inside. Plenty of options if you just want to play them. But actual collecting, that's a whole different ballgame. And thankfully, I haven't got hooked on that line because, man, look at these prices. I couldn't swing this all the time. I'm fine with my comics and again my toys. Heck, I had to go back and get my Godzilla because I missed the one that I had growing up, so I had to buy another one. So I get it. Nostalgia is a strong force for a lot of us these days. But with that said, $363. My example's $599 for just the cartridge, which if you have the box and the manual, it's even more. You're almost at $1,000 for this thing if you've got the box and the manual, and if it's still sealed, hold your horses. $3K, over $3,000 if you have a sealed copy of this Metal Warriors mech platformer game. And here again, give you a sense. Maybe I should put this as like the second thing. Before I give you prices, maybe I should from now on go and show you some of the examples of the games ahead of time because maybe that'll help story tell a little bit better because I feel like I'm going backwards after giving you prices and then telling you what the game was like. Maybe for next time. Again, this is still new to me. Me doing this toy channel. This is my side channel, my second channel. I have a main comic channel, Renovision. You can go link it below. Go check it out if you like comics and all that stuff, pop culture, etc. Because we got a lot of live shows too. But this is my little side project just for me to do oddball little things that I like. So here you can see classic. It's almost like a Metroid style type of game. I mean, granted, you're in a huge mech as opposed to just in a body armor suit, but still, you get the idea, right? With that said, we've got a couple more games left. We are not done yet. And up next, we have this guy, Harvest Moon. Classic. Classic game. I mean, I still do versions of this today. And it's a strategy game, technically, 1997, getting near the end of the Super Nintendo run here. But strategy is one way to put it. This is, kind of the early farmer days, like those early farming type games. And yes, you're trying to build a town, you're trying to build your place up, etc. But it's still addictive. And this thing, if you find just the cartridge, $315. So decent return there. With the box and the manual, you're looking at over $800. And if you somehow still have it sealed or find one sealed in plastic, I don't know how you're going to do it, but if you do, you're looking at that 1,600 bucks. And again, as a recent example, we're looking at this on November 9th. Granted, I know November was a little bit far off now. It was almost 2 months ago, but still, it's what I could find. And this is a complete in box, not still sealed. So $8.99. So that kind of matches up with your $827 price there. But still, $900 just for having the box, the manual, and the game. Crazy. And again, here are some of the screenshots of the game. Again, you're kind of wandering. You're looking for materials. You're looking for food. You're looking to grow stuff, and you're meeting other people, talking, running, doing little side missions, doing little jobs for others. You can do silly things, I believe, like fishing and all kinds of like. It seems like day-to-day type stuff, but man, this still was an escape. And with that said, we're going to escape this game and go to our final one. And this is what I'm, technically, it's kind of like on the comic book side of thing. We'll call this one a ghost. So this is going to be that really, really tough to find game, whether it be for reasons where, they were recalled or, whatever their secret story might be. Some of these games are very, very tough to find. And the ghost I want to talk about today is this guy right here. I think I might have covered this one previously on an older version of this series, but again, it's a platformer from 1995, sort of a samurai-esque Hudson Soft game. So it's sort of a shinobi type warrior. Some places list this as a Blockbuster exclusive, but I don't believe that's the case. I think this is just a case of a game that wasn't sold in a lot of places over here. And as such, it's not easy to find, but it does have a large cult following. People look at this, and there are a lot of people who have this as their grail game. So much so that just the cartridge alone, once again, no box, no instructions, $915 for this thing. Again, you think that's a crazy average? You think that's a crazy price? Here you go. Copy sold December 14th, $1,280 at auction, mind you, with 11 bids. So this wasn't just some buy it now. There was a fight. So again, there's people who look for this game. This is not a secret game. This is a game people look for, but it is not going to be easy to find. This is a tough game to track down, which is why it is so expensive. But hey, I'm just letting you know because information doesn't hurt. And who knows, maybe you get lucky when you're out there. But still, again, the final conflict. $915 if you find it loose. Like I said, just the game. If you somehow find the box in the manual, over $2,000, $2,373. And somehow, if it's still sealed, well, you can buy a nice little small used car, I guess, these days for $6,363. All right, maybe it's not gonna be a nice car, but it'll get you where you need to go. Point being, $6,000 for a video game. Craziness. And again, just to give you a sense of the gameplay, and if it brings back any memories to you, it has that kind of a Ninja Gaiden, like I said, shinobi kind of feel to it, except more of a mechanized cyber ninja of a sort. But you see how the villains are. It's got to have a familiar vibe. I never played this game, but again, having played things like Ninja Gaiden, and like Shinobi, like I got the sense of how this game would play. It almost has a Castlevania kind of setup too, even how some of the the boss fights go. But still, big numbers, big prices, and with that, that is our last game of today. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully you found something interesting here. Until next time, I'll find another console to cover. Granted, there's still plenty more Super Nintendo games we can go back. This is not the whole list of expensive ones or hard to find or even ghost games. I can do multiple lists on this, so I'll probably put a poll out one of these days to figure out what you guys want to see next, but there's still more to cover, even amongst the consoles I've covered already. We still got more PlayStation 2s, PlayStations, Xbox games, Nintendo, Super Nintendos. We can go back to Commodore 64 if you want to go that way and go with the floppy disks. But I know that's really getting into a niche sort of collector. But with that said, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you enjoy what I'm doing here on Toy Informer. Keep telling your friends so I can keep growing this tiny little channel. And I'll be back soon as I can with some more content. I know I'm trying to get this at least down to a show a week of some kind, whether it be Weird World Collectibles, Top 10 Toys, Gaming Gold, or something. But the New Year's going in, I'll get more into a rhythm, and like I said, hopefully be more on a weekly basis. So with that, bear with me, and I'll see you soon with more content. All right, later.